Hey, another draft physics video presentation. Oh, wait a minute. A couple things I didn't fix. Alright, I'm back. Alright, so comments and such. We'll see where we go. I haven't decided yet. So, Jerry Hall, who I blocked, quite a while ago, and he keeps emailing comments, which is fine. You get your say until I just say you're not worth the trouble. Obviously I can block emails also. But anyway, so he titles it "When Everything Looks Like Crap," and then he says, might be time to wipe your glasses because that could be the problem. I'm using glasses metaphorically. Anybody can say this to anybody, right? So this is just pessimist versus optimist arguments, or and what I've clearly demonstrated is that your gurus of science, your icons, are telling stories that just aren't true, and they can't get the simplest geometry right. I mean, really simple geometric errors they're making. Saying a line is this long when it's not. Not recognizing that the pattern is projected into a space, and that if you have a distance L to a spot and then you move the distance angularly, that you have to keep the L the same. You can't make the L go infinitely on a flat plane. I mean, real simple mistakes that just really no excuse for. No excuse that the evidence isn't in any way tightened up, and especially when it's evidence for some extraordinary claim. And these are extraordinary claims that particles split in two, they interfere with themselves, they superimpose into 4 million different universes. I mean, and they're entangled. I mean, extraordinary claims based on just horrible evidence. So when I say everything looks like crap, I'm saying your evidence is crap. All right, it has every single feature of crap, of religion, of lying, of distortion, of propaganda, of perversion. I mean, it's really, really bad evidence. Okay, I mean, I don't even want to get into, all the comparisons I could make in history. This is like the worst kind of argumentation. It's so bad. All right, it's such a perversion of the truth. Alright, next sentence. Things might not be the way you see them. So, I mean, it's just the kind of thing you could say to every other person on human, every argument, every disagreement, just blah, 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 blah. And what is the, what's the reasoning or the logic, this whole idea of what should make you doubt? Right? What should make you doubt is when the evidence has been contrived, when there's evidence that the evidence has been tampered with. That you can, you can overtly see that they're selling it, the evidence, they're not presenting the evidence. These are all indications of it smelling like crap, looking like crap, being crap. And that's the whole argument I've been making, and that's what I've been demonstrating. And you're not counter-arguing any of those pieces of evidence. The stunning evidence that, even though the resolution is 400 times better in space, they've never even attempted the Eddington experiment. It takes 10 minutes from space. You don't need an eclipse. Do it any day you want to. 10 minutes of, photographic time. And we're supposed to believe that's credible. I'm saying, well, no, it's incredible. That's preposterous. A foundational experiment that made Einstein a household name, and we're never going to repeat the experiment with any better technology? I mean, it's insanely preposterous as a theory for you to tell me that that's the way it, well, yeah, we don't bother doing this repeat experiment thing. It's not a principle or anything. We have no urgency. We have no need. Because everybody believes you're walking on water stories. They don't want to see the videotape. They say, no, I don't need, I have faith. I love Jesus. You just love a story. Okay, so you're telling me that I should somehow doubt what I see. But you're not giving me any reason to do that doubting. And I have every reason to doubt you and doubt the icons' names you throw at me, because I'm showing how they can't do simple geometry. Richard Feynman can't figure out the most obvious things about the two-slit experiment because he never thought about it. He just accepted it and said, oh yeah, I can make a whole religion out of this. The religion of there's a random God. Sorry, no sale. Okay, it's completely dishonest to accuse every scientist. And what have I accused every scientist of? Oh, I've accused them of jumping the evidence, of jumping on a bandwagon, of not doing any fair evaluation. They didn't kick the tires. They didn't look this thing at all over. It's like they were buying a car for their mother-in-law. They just couldn't care less. They were so undetailed and disinterested. And they really were interested, though, in the fantastic, bizarre story they could tell everybody, and they could be wizards. This is about, you know, understanding something as simple as, well, I can grind up some leaves and it works like aspirin, you know, and I can make people's headaches go away. And so instead of just telling them, yeah, just grind up some of those leaves and, you know, I'll do a bunch of mumbo jumbo and pretend to be important. They're just playing the medicine man role. You know, they're keeping the secret knowledge in their little bag. And they're not telling everybody how simple it is. You know, they're not giving anything away. Now they can pretend to have this sacred knowledge. You know, they can be special people. That's all it's about. So yes, that's the crime of science. And they're all taught these silly fables. It's just a religion, okay? And none of the preachers really study any of it. They just accept it. All right, scientists of making things up. Well, I'm saying they're making such egregious errors that what else do you call it? I mean, the errors are so profound. You know, they're just glaring errors. I mean, when Feynman draws that slop on the board and doesn't even account for the fact that the single slit makes a pattern and the double slit makes a similar but distinctly different pattern, and that the two-wave theory can't explain that pattern at all. And so why are we pretending it has something to do with the story when it really doesn't explain it at all? It doesn't work mathematically. It critically fails. And then NASA does the same thing. They show you a bunch of these galactic images of lensing light. They can't do it with any consistent math. They can't explain mathematically how any of this crap happens. It's, you know, I mean, Einstein would tell you the Einstein ring is going to be invisible because it's going to be so small. It's going to be such a narrow little ring. How come they're gigantic? They're thousands of light years across. As it, you know, it doesn't make any sense. The theory is broken, and they don't pay any attention to how broken it is, and they don't pay any attention to how meager and tiny the evidence is. You know, playing this little game that the Bell inequality has been violated in a complex polarization experiment where they don't even understand what polarization is. They're telling you they detect gravitational waves and matter was turned into bent space, and they tell you all these fables, and what do they show you as real evidence? Nothing. And you believe it because you're religion. You're a religious kook. You're not making any kind of argument here for anything except jump on the bandwagon. I'm on the bandwagon. I like the bandwagon. It's a fun bandwagon. That's all, you know. Feynman's sitting here saying it's fun to contemplate the universe as being completely chaotic and messed up. No rules, no anything, just random crap. He thinks it's fun. Because they want to believe in magic. Well, that's exactly the truth. That's how every indication is. It's screaming loud and clear. What is your motivation? I'm arguing that clearly your motivation can't be the truth, because here you are arguing without citing or conceding a single point. I've clearly demonstrated the evidence sucks. It's weak at minimum. You won't say that. Right? And I've demonstrated it over. It's so weak. There really aren't any experiments that prove any of this crap, you know, to any kind of level that it should force belief. You've done far less than wrote The Origin of Species. You haven't detailed anything, okay? And you're just making these huge claims based on this meager, terrible evidence. All right. And bullshit. Nobody is correct all the time. Well, that's not the argument, is it? They're all specific arguments about specific subjects. And it's really not about being correct. It's about being not outrageously incorrect. Okay, about complete distortions of the actual physical experiments. I mean, to say detector experiments were done when they were never done, I mean, isn't that a little bit outrageous to have a whole conversation about what happens when we detect a photon when you know it never took place? It's impossible. It's physically impossible to do. So why would anybody indulge in a conversation about what happens when you do it? Because you didn't do it. I mean, you don't think those are egregious crimes for science to commit, where it implies overtly, almost directly gives you a time and place where the experiment was done. Okay, they don't do that. But I mean, just so implies that this experiment took place somewhere. And then I could go into all this stuff where you're saying these are good scientists, and yet they don't make any corrections of where all the pseudoscientists have taken their claims and taken them to extraordinary places. You know, where all of a sudden now the physics is actually saying something as explicit as Bohr said. You know, like somehow the universe doesn't happen until we look at it. Do you believe that? I mean, have you fallen into that big a pile of nonsense where you think there's any evidence of that? Oh, you're just pathetic. There is no doubt that Feynman and Einstein had a passion for understanding how nature works. I think there is reason to doubt that their motivation was anything other than to, you know, play wizard. You know, to try to master it, and being called a master doesn't depend on you getting right answers. It depends on you giving people what they want to hear, and that's what Feynman and Einstein gave people, was another religion to believe in, another whack-a-verse. You know, some place where somehow we can get out of this galaxy, and somehow we can do all of this stuff. You know, does it open the door to this kind of wooey bullshit? Anyway, and so, I mean, Feynman overtly tells you that it's not a cause and effect universe. He's overtly saying it. Okay, he's breaking something that fundamental in saying that, well, it's not true that, you know, the same conditions produce the same results. You know, that there's magic somewhere. The magic wand hits it and changes reality. It's not going to come out the same way. Even though I have the same conditions, I'm not going to get the same outcome. Now, that's in the context of we all know that, oh yeah, it's really hard to roll dice exactly the same way twice. So we all know that's really hard to do. And he knows that too. So he knows this isn't a conversation about the fact that I can't recreate the conditions. We know that he's absolutely saying that if you could recreate the conditions, you won't get the same outcome. He's saying it. Now, is there any evidence for it? Have they proven it? Have they demonstrated with anything? No. I mean, so, you know, what the fuck? And so did many others. Well, again, it depends on what you, like I said, the scientific method is the scientific method. Einstein knew that Eddington's experiment was marginal. He knew it. You know, let's not have play. Oh, Einstein's too stupid to know that it was cloudy and raining, and that you didn't get very good photographs in the rain. You know, so yes, Einstein was too stupid to know that. You know, and yet he took full credit, right? He said, well, yeah, it's a good thing that the universe is right because I was right. You know, so I mean, he showed some real ego then. I mean, later in life he got quite humble. But he showed a lot of ego back then. You know, on just bullshit evidence. A piece of crap as evidence. The Eddington experiment was a piece of crap. Alright? It should have never been, oh yeah, we're all convinced now. You know, light is bent twice as much as any other material form of matter in the universe. Even though none of the other forces are bent by gravity, this one special one is. And it's bent twice as much. So it's an extraordinary claim. Less than ordinary evidence. Anyway, Feynman's statement. This is how nature works. If you don't like it, find another universe. Well, what he said was, if you don't like it, tough. That's what he said, okay? So you want to change the language a bit, go ahead. But that's what he said, okay? If you don't like it, tough. Yeah. So that's the attitude. And not liking it means I haven't seen any compelling evidence. And I can demonstrate that your two-slit analysis of photons splitting in two and interfering with themselves is absolute nonsense, and it doesn't make mathematical sense. It doesn't work mathematically. Two photons in a double slit won't make the pattern. You need four. You need four sources. Four, four, four. And that's when you have some hope of getting the right answer. But you can't get the right answer if you still don't know. You're not projecting it on a flat plane is retarded. There's no infinite planes in reality. Okay. It's something that happens equidistant from space, because light travels the speed of light, a constant speed. See, if you know light travels a constant speed, you know it's kind of silly to have in your math a distance L, that you're projecting the image at, and that you can't figure out that the distance gets much longer as you start going sideways, that you can go an infinite amount of distance, and that if you don't have anything in your equation to account for that infinite change in your infinite distance, you're not even going to get the pattern right anyway. I mean, those are simple algebraic mistakes, and you're saying, oh, they're still great science because they somehow proved it, and they somehow understood it, and they somehow detailed it, and they're the authorities on it. I'm saying they're the authority on skipping over all these details. They don't give a shit about the details. Feynman says it's the same. Photons are the same as electrons, are the same as, mongooses. No, it's not. The experiments aren't the same. They're not conducted the same way. And clearly the things in the experiment have completely different properties that you have to account for. All right. Let's see. Find another universe. Proved. All right. Feynman's statement, this is how nature works. If you don't like it, find another universe, proved how much he believed in the scientific method. It's an amazing statement. So he said tough. That's how much he believed in the scientific method. And he said, oh, well, there could be an explanation that's rational, but you're not going to find it, because I didn't find it. Right? That was his attitude was just so arrogant, and I've demonstrated it. I mean, this is just, it's in the record. Even his friends called him arrogant. Where was he this bastion of, this icon of the scientific method, caution, be careful, tie up all these loose ends. Where was he an example of that? Prove it before you state it. Where was he an example of that? So again, the scientific method is just draw it all sloppy, and it doesn't matter. Pretend 1 millimeter is 6 feet. It doesn't matter. Just get it all wrong, describe it all wrong and inaccurately, because that's good science. I mean, he was a horrible example of good science. All right. That we should study it without prejudice. Again, these are words he said. These aren't what he did in his life, right? He compared drag, the argument of drag of electrons or protons or subatomic particles, to raindrops, and said, that's good enough, I'm done. Now, did you think about the fact that electrons don't fare very well? That they don't go very far, that protons don't fly through space. We don't get hit by any electrons from Alpha Centauri. None of them make the trip, yet big giant helium nucleuses can make the trip. Does that make any sense to you? Well, it doesn't make any sense to me. So, they didn't even think about their drag argument and recognize that, well, maybe it is a real thing, because electrons don't go very far. And they really should. They have thousands of photons worth of energy built into them, essentially, and they're, propelled by pretty strong motivators, and yet they don't go very far. Muons decay. Why do they decay? And they don't decay like radioactive decay. They decay like, they lose velocity and die. Well, anyway. And with an open mind. So again, the open mind is tough. That was the example of his open mind. All right, and again, this isn't even about having even a tiny bit of an open mind. This is about being a little tiny bit honest. So again, I'll just argue to you, do you really think you have evidence to back up these claims? These extraordinary claims are being made based on, as I've shown, complete perversions of simple experiments. I mean, two frickin' slits and they can't describe it accurately. And yet you trust them on all these other complex experiments to be interpreting it correctly and getting the math right and all that kind of stuff, when I can show them getting the math wrong. I can show them telling you something that can't be true, that two waves make the double slit pattern. Can't be true. It's not possible for it to work. And it's been wrong for 200 years. And they've been selling this idea that it's right for 200 years when they can't make that mathematically work. It won't create the pattern. It won't even if you took the double pattern out, even if you took the envelope out, it can't even get the little bars right. And the only way they could make it get the little bars right is, as I described to you, is by saying, oh, you have to do the experiment with infinitesimally small openings. You can't smell how obviously their math doesn't work in all circumstances, that obviously it isn't getting to the core of it, because it doesn't work unless you're using infinitesimally small slits. And why would they use infinitesimally small slits? Right, for the obvious reason, to completely eliminate the distinction between one surface and the other, to make the distance so small that you can't see the effect of the distance. And the honest truth is, if they did the experiment with honest size slits, that they can't make their math work. It doesn't work. And you keep saying that this is good science? Come on. It's weak evidence, even if they were right. It's weak evidence. And the fact that they can't even describe it honestly just proves it's even weaker evidence. And you still won't admit, oh, there's good reason not to believe. Very good reason. Oh, you people are so dishonest. Ugh, it's terrible. You are the one who try to force your belief system. So again, I didn't try to force any belief system. What belief system did I have? All I had was, hey, this can't be the right answer. So that was my first conclusion, was that's just wacky crap. Okay, they don't have any proof of that. And then all I did was say, well, can't there be the same? I mean, all these forces are moving the speed of light. That's what occurred to me. Right? Gravity, magnetism, light, it's all moving the same speed. So let's figure out how the same thing could answer all the questions. And so I thought about gravity being light. And as soon as I turned it into a particle, well, then I ended up in Lesage kind of models. And that all makes so much sense. It perfectly creates the inverse square law. Yeah, that's working. So, you know, it just started falling into place, and clearly the last 10 years has just been a demonstration. I'm not forcing it to fall into my belief system. I'm merely saying it's easily unified. That this big project of Einstein's to find a unification theory seems quite easy if you just unify under the notion that there's two kinds of things in the universe. Force, moving the speed of light, and matter that goes where the force tells it. Empty space isn't telling matter where to go. Force is telling matter where to go. Anyway, where it doesn't belong. So you have no evidence of any other agenda on my part than to find a good answer rather than a silly, stupid answer that's poorly evidenced. So again, you're the ones guilty of the crime here, not me. The talk about bulldozers is circular reasoning. How the fuck is that true? So the basic point he's going to make here is that, you know, until you explain creation of the universe, you can't talk about how the universe works. Now, Einstein provided no explanation for what created bent space. He doesn't explain why a photon exists or why electrons exist or why protons exist, and yet you listen to him. Just amazing. So he wants me to really, I have to explain creation. Okay, so I've given you 2 + 2 + 2 physics. It's dirt simple. Two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, electron and proton, elemental matter, and just two kinds of interaction. Okay, you give it momentum or you change the direction of the force. There, I'm saying that those simple functions answer all the questions, and that's not simple enough. Yet conventional physics standard model has neutrinos, cubinos, tau, blah blahs. It has 400, I think they're up to now, different kinds of particles, different kinds of mechanisms, different kinds of things. They're identifiable things. A gluon is different than a well, whatever the other tachyons, I don't know. They're the ones with all of that crap to explain who created it, where did it come from. So this is just so he calls it circular reasoning because I say that's the way the universe is. Yeah, I don't know what the universe was 100 trillion years ago. Maybe it didn't have that much stuff in it. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Maybe it evolved one little photon at a time. Who the hell knows? But he's saying until I do that, I can't tell you what's in the universe now, which is just too silly. So you're just a huge hypocrite. You don't require any of your scientists to answer all of these creation questions, you little sack of shit liar. Okay, then explain how the bulldozers work. What? I have to explain something as elemental as the force moves in a straight line until it's got to push some rocks, and when it has to push some rocks, one skid turns a little more than the others, and it loses a little traction, and it can go off in a new direction. But that's it. Straight line until it hits some rocks it has to push, and then depending on what the rock was doing when it's pushing it, it's going to go a little crooked. That's it. Is circular reasoning. Okay. And then explain how the bulldozers work. Well, like I said, I have no obligation to do that, frankly. I have no obligation to get into why why the thing exists. I don't have to do abiogenesis to explain evolution. Okay, how exactly are they pushing anything? It's a force. It's moving. It has momentum. You can't understand the concept. It's moving through space. It has some mass, and it hits things. And when it hits things, it keeps going, and the thing either goes with it or else. It doesn't really have a choice. It has to accept the fact that it's being pushed. That's simple. There's nothing complicated about that as a concept. So on quantum level, there is no room for abstract language. So just an amazing statement, right? When you think of how bizarrely abstract, they have wave functions, they have virtual photons, they have all of this wooey crap. A bent geodesic. Is there any explanation for how that got there? What's that made out of? What's bent exactly? I mean, just an amazing accusation. I'm just amazing hypocrisy. I mean, you can't be more of a disgusting hypocrite than to make these kind of idiotic claims. Oh, you're just what a horrible person you are. You can't say an electron loses energy. Oh, sure, I fucking can, but I didn't say an electron loses energy, did I, asshole? I never said an electron has energy. What I said is an electron occupies bulldozers pushing it. It's a boulder. It doesn't go unless there's a bulldozer pushing it. When the bulldozer's not there, it doesn't go anywhere. But there's a lot of bulldozers. So it's inevitable that it's always going to be going somewhere. And what I said is if a bulldozer is pushing a rock, it's losing energy. It's going less miles per hour. So in effect, if it has appointments at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock on that day that it's supposed to be doing, it can't get to those appointments. It's clearly lost some capacity to do things in the universe. It's like multitasking, jackass. You don't think you lose energy, so to speak, quote unquote, when you have tasks? And that the more tasks you have, the less tasks you can do. There's less you can do if you're already doing something. You can't, that's too complex an argument for you. Then you're really fucking dumb. All right. That energy needs to go somewhere. It did go somewhere. It moved a big piece of matter someplace. But the catch is, lots of times the matter ends up getting pushed the opposite way by another bulldozer. So they got it. Both of them just wasted their time, right? The universe looks exactly the same, but two bulldozers wasted a bunch of fuel moving a piece of matter back and forth, and they went slower. They lost time. They had to use time. So I said time is money, using a quick little metaphor. What, you don't think that's true? The money of the universe is energy. Time is energy. If you're moving slower, you're losing energy. Kind of obvious. All right, anyway, if there is drag, you must define what it is. Now, I don't have to define anything, but I already did that. I defined it clearly, just like Feynman defined it. Well, if you're running into the rain, there's more rain hitting in the face than from behind. What it needs to be defined. But the fact is that the drag isn't instantaneous because the stuff doesn't move instantaneous speed. So drag will be relative to your circumstance. You could be lucky and run into very little rain. There just happens to be less rain in front of you just by random chance. And so for a few milliseconds, you're not running into more rain. Or you could have twice as much because of bad luck. So the point is that it's not, drag isn't reciprocal. There's no equal sign. It's not exactly equal because it's circumstantial. But that's another thing you probably can't understand. Inventing new abstract concepts doesn't explain anything. Well, clearly they're not abstract as I'm metaphoring it to bulldozers and rocks. Right? So how is that abstract? Right? I do a perfect metaphor analogy to something as simple as a bulldozer with a, it just has forever gas. It can go for a very, very long time. Trillions of years maybe. Because it has a very, has a nuclear power plant, whatever you want to say. It's got plenty of energy. But it's got a limit to its speed. It can only go 30 miles an hour at its maximum speed. And then all there is a question. The only question is it pushing a boulder? Because if it's pushing a boulder, it's going 25 miles an hour instead. And that's it. And so he says that's an abstract concept. You can't get more unabstract. I mean, it is so benignly, grisly, simple. And everywhere we look, that's how the universe works. And he's calling that abstract. I mean, there's nothing, you can't do anything with people like this, right? I mean, and again, that's in the context of their abstract theory of wave functions, floating, flying around, superimposed particles in more than one place at the same time. Oh, that's not abstract at all. I mean, it's just amazing fucking hypocrisy. Oh, you people are so dishonest. So again, all I've asked for from most people, I'm not asking you to believe. Okay, to be convinced that I have a gigantic preponderance of evidence. I only have the evidence that exists, and yes, some of it just plain sucks, and that's a fact. We don't have great pictures of photons. We don't have the hidden secret, the hidden life of electrons. We haven't made that documentary yet. With any kind of detail. We haven't put our little spy camera in their little, watch their secret life. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, there's lots of evidence that we can deduce some truths out of, and what I have overtly shown is that their evidence has been perverted. They have perverted and distorted the evidence to sell a theory, okay? And the simple theory answers the question. Again, we just go back to the radar experiment. Where's the honesty in any of these scientific demonstrations? You're telling me they don't understand what radio jamming is. Because guess what? It's the same mechanics. It's the same exact geometry. So why should I believe this preposterous theory of entangled particles superimposed all over the place when I can believe the simple one? The simple one that, oh, you can't receive two out of phase signals. The same frequency, two signals out of phase, I can't detect either one with a basic radio receiver. Unless I use a directional one. And if they used a directional one in the radar experiment, they would find out, oh yeah, I can still receive the radar. None of it was blocked. None of it stopped by the other signal. It's still getting here. If I use a directional antenna, I can pick it up fine. So again, their own distortion and lies are so overt. And here you won't concede. You won't concede to any crimes they've committed against the scientific method, or against the truth, or against fairness, or against any of this. And it's so egregious and so obvious. And you're just so dishonest. And so what is your motivation again? So again, you talked about motivations and funny glasses. What kind of glasses are you wearing? What kind of God do you believe in that's forcing you to be such a lying sack of shit? What are you defending here? It's again, it's almost, it's just like it's just, you could just go to the Trumpers, and it's obvious they don't want to make America great again. They want to make America white again, okay, and non-foreign. And I'm not saying I'm not, in some respects, sympathetic to some of those points. I mean, the Democrats do seem like all they want to do is socialize everything and create some sort of crazy utopia where nobody speaks the same language. And it all sounds like a pile of shit to me. But it's no reason to go jump to a lunatic and defend a lunatic. Trump is a fucking lying, self-interested, crazy fuck. There's no reason to say he's a good man. It's just so funny. And here you are defending outrageous crimes against science. You're defending very bad science. And why? Why your desperation? Why not just admit that, yeah, this is some bad science out there? This is really poorly treated evidence. Well, why not admit that your lawyers are being shysters, that they're not telling the story honestly and truthfully? They're exaggerating preposterously. It's the most proven theory in the history of mankind. I mean, it's just absolute bullshit. It invented the cell phone. None of that happened. That's all recorded history. I mean, no theory invented any of this stuff. The experiments that led to the improvements and the miniaturization didn't have anything to do with any fucking theory. Oh, just so dishonest. Anyway, all right. So, we'll go to a couple of comments, I guess. I mean, they're strange, but, what else is new? Alright, so this guy, Flare Lens, I don't know, kind of a weird name. Spend your $1,500, it's $1,700 now, but anyway, and patent your work. I don't need to. I've already copyrighted it by publishing it reliably. So I've published it in a manner that's durable, in the sense that it'll be very easy to prove when it was published and prove that other people saw it published and blah blah blah. So I don't need to do any of that. All right, I've already securely copyrighted my the timing of my publication, and that's all you need to, that's all publication is for, is merely to establish a timeline. So I've already done that well beyond what is needed to prove a case, so I don't have to do any of this patent crap. You will not get any physicist arguing with you. Well, all you naysayers, it's going to happen eventually. All right, and it's like any movement or any change. It's like Darwin's argument or anybody. It takes time. People are cement-headed retards. Okay, and this is unfortunate that the people who you would expect to have the integrity to honor the truth and defend the truth are also just religious kooks, and they'll behave like religious kooks. The sciences are full of fanatics, and that's really bad. It makes it tougher. It would have been easier to do this, ironically, 300 years ago when they would threaten to burn me at the stake. It'd probably be easier to make this argument because the intellectuals you talk to were looking for the truth. They're not looking for the truth anymore. They've bought into a silly fable. They're riding the bandwagon right off the cliff. They just couldn't care less. Your observations and explanations cannot be proven wrong. It's not even proving them wrong. Like I said, half the story is proving them wrong, which I've done. I've proven it's bad science. I've proven it's illogical. I've proven it's unreasonable to cite detector experiments that were never done. That's unreasonable argumentation in a courtroom. You're not allowed, to argue evidence that isn't on the table. Okay, reminds me of Copernicus. Well, like I said, I don't know if it's at all comparable. Everything is the same, only the angles are different, and that changes everything. I don't know exactly the context of that quote when I said it, but whatever. It's a belief of mine. Well, that's fine. I haven't fully absorbed your ideas yet, and you've helped me understand ideas I have about light, which I found difficult to put into words. Thank you. Don't really know what to make out of that. I mean, some of these arguments are so simple. It's like, what is there to absorb? You know, the fact is, particle theory does work explaining the two-slit experiment. They say there's no particle theory that can explain this. Particles can't explain it. No, it can perfectly. Okay, the only condition is you have to accept that I can fire bullets at a frequency, that it's a pattern of bullets to go in, and then I can scatter the bullets and I can recreate the pattern, and all that works fine. It mathematically explains exactly what you see. Okay, so it works. So that's what's to absorb, except, oh, there are competing ideas that do work. There are options. We don't have to believe what they say. It's not like there's no choice, like there's no theory that can possibly explain it except the woo theory, the God, the random God. Alright, anyway, so Michael says, I found that arguing alternative ideas, concept, physical mechanism with scientists, physicists is like banging your head against a brick wall. I find it interesting that you actually found any of these people. Yes, but obviously, you know, the ones you find are, they just dismiss. They don't want to be challenged, and they're clearly cowards. So as soon as you indicate that you might have something that puts them on the defensive, they love attacking flat earthers. They just, it's just a wonderful fun day for them to go out and find a retard, make fun of them. But as soon as you indicate you might be challenging the integrity of their belief system, yeah, they just run away. Little sissies. Okay. I'm still wondering if light speed is the true physical speed limit of the universe. You know, so this is really a whole bunch of crap. Well, anyway, I'll read it. Okay, you went to the trouble to write, I'll read it. I don't know why anybody would have any doubts about it. I mean, frankly, there's not a single experiment demonstrating any indication that anything ever got anywhere faster than the speed of light. So there's just nothing. There's absolutely no reason to have any doubts. No force has ever accomplished the task. There is no ESP. There is no pre-knowledge. There is none of it has any evidence. So why would I bother even thinking that it's having some doubt about the fact that there's a limit? It seems quite obvious there's a limit. And then if you start thinking about it mechanically in any kind of sense of understanding that, you know, matter does move because forces push it, you know, you're done. Anyway, it does appear that way, and that the idea about being pretty much a path, this, I don't know, it's written kind of funkily. It does appear that way, and the idea about it being pretty much a path towards a very loud explosion somewhat makes sense, obviously. I don't know what he was attempting to say there. Obviously, things happen and we have to wait to know about it. That's a fact of the universe. There's no way to know anything until some force lets you know. And letting you know is it's an interaction. There has to be an interaction, and you have to have an interaction with something in the universe. And the only somethings, the fastest moving somethings, move at the speed of light. So you're always going to have to wait at least that long. So your perception has to have that built into it, that you already know, oh, you know, I have to wait longer. You know, that the reflection I see in a mirror has to go 2 distances. You know, the light has to be coming from a source, reflect off the mirror, and then get back to me. So if I'm looking at myself, the light has to go that way, and then it has to have the return trip. So I'm always going to look further away in the mirror than I really am. Anyway, because it's twice as far. The me I'm looking at is actually twice as far away because the light has to go both ways. Anyway, however, what it is mostly a limit on what we can detect. So again, this idea, you know, detecting is interacting. So yes, but yes, of course, it's what we detect, and we can understand that, though. So I'm saying, what's the burden here? There's no complex burden to understand that we always know about something, you know, later than instantaneously. We can never know anything, experience anything instantaneously. We have to wait to be notified. All right. Whether in terms of reflected light visually or indirectly. Indirectly, meaning that instantaneous appearance or disappearance of an object, I guess, is as traveling any distance would be detectable. Well, again, if there was any such thing as this instantaneous, there wouldn't be movement then, right? You're talking teleportation, and then teleportation still has to be in the form of some sort of force. So whether you teleport matter, you're still moving matter at the speed of some force. All right, so it's still going to be the same limitations in terms of light speed's going to get in your way. I do not think that's problematic too. I do think that's problematic too. So again, well, like I said, this isn't that complicated, but whatever. Acceleration is half the story, is watching something go through the process of going the speed of light. But again, it wouldn't matter if something actually was going the speed of light and heading for you. As I sort of pointed out, it's collecting all the reflective energy. Okay, all the reflective energy between it and you. Every single photon that hit it, it's now moving the same speed as the reflection. Every single one of them. So it just collects every piece of energy as it moves. And when it shows up, guess what? You're going to see one hell of a light show. So in a sense, the thing moving the speed of light towards you is also invisible. There's no way for you to see it because there's no way for the reflected light to get to you any faster than it itself gets to you. The arrival time of your information is going to be exactly the same as the arrival time of the object. So in a sense, it's invisible because it's going, when it shows up, it's going to give you its entire profile all at once. It's although everything once it got to the speed of light is not you're not going to get any pre-knowledge of. Anyway, I mean, these are I wouldn't call them paradoxes, but these are the things that just make it so obvious that if you did have something moving faster than the speed of light, that it would create insane negative consequences to the universe's current function. The universe would be in really big trouble. All right, I guess as traveling any distance would be detectable. Well, like I said, you're not going to detect something going the speed of light because there's no way to detect it. Whether it's going away from you or towards you, you're out of luck. No information is going to be able to get to you regarding what it's doing. So if it's just even going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it changed its speed instantaneously, like I said, like you pointed out, acceleration is the only thing you could possibly see, is deceleration and acceleration, because now you can still get information before the event. But every other circumstance, it going away from you, clearly invisible. Okay, you can't see it. Right? No way to see it. Nothing reflects off of it. Nothing can get to it to reflect off of it. And if it's going towards you, it's moving the same speed as the light, so you're done. Do you think that's problematic too? I do think that's problematic too. The acceleration required to go light speed or faster would be such a long path of acceleration. Well, it wouldn't be that long for a small object, so, yeah, obviously moving big masses, would take some time, but I think it takes less than, adding 1 g per, minute, or I can't remember how it goes. But it adds up pretty quick. You can get up to the speed of light, in a year or something, 2 years, something like that. It would be well outside without destroying your physical body, I'm just saying. It would be well outside the visible range before we could see it disappear. And if it flew past at light speed or faster, we probably just literally wouldn't see it at all. Well, obviously we don't see bullets. We don't see a lot of things that go very fast. So, yeah, obviously we need a certain number of photons to know something's going on and coming from the same place. And if we're not getting those, we're not going to see anything. Interesting. Well, whatever. I recall a similar concept about breaking the sound barrier in terms of speeds. The way an aircraft slams into air molecules. Well, again, it doesn't really slam into them, right? It's slamming into them all the time. When it's going 30 miles an hour, it's slamming into them, blah, blah, blah. And obviously you have to take that into account in how you build something to be able to deal with the pressures. So none of that's all that interesting. Anyway. The way molecules would surely destroy the airplane. Well, obviously, you have to know what you're building what speed you're building your airplane for, just like you have to know what speed your car is built for. Except it doesn't. It definitely puts incredible stress on the airplane, and it requires a solid design to account for that, especially having any control over it. Well, again, I could make the same argument for a car. I don't even have to make it an airplane. I mean, obviously, you're not going to go around a track at 250 miles an hour, in a Duesenberg or something. However, it is not impossible to go faster than the speed of sound after all. I guess the energy accumulated also released it in the form of sound. Well, sound isn't, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just a function. It's just a function of moving, and it's one that we can detect, and we detect it as sound. We interpret the movement as sound, but it's not really, the sound is just the fact that you're banging electrons into you're banging atoms into atoms at a speed that they can't transfer the direction. So it's happening so quickly that none of the electrons can respond, none of the other parts of the atom can respond, so the whole atom has to essentially move in one direction. So it's very efficient movement because you're pushing all the electrons in the atom, so they don't have time to tell their neighbors, oh, I have problems, I'm being pushed. The other neighbors don't get to know, they don't get to react, none of that happens, and that's why the energy moves very fast, straight, and efficient, is because it breaks down the usual tension between the electrons. The electrons are waiting for the information that something happened to their neighbor. They don't even know about it. So if it happens slowly, the system absorbs the energy. If it happens quickly, it doesn't. Same argument with the bullet. I move the bullet really slow, your body will absorb the energy. If I move it slow enough, you could almost imagine your body will eject the bullet, But if I move it quickly, none of that happens. All right. Let's see. I will instantly admit this idea of a sound barrier being an impermeable barrier was mostly just the collective suspicions of World War II fighter pilots in relation to flying planes, and less so actual science. Well, I think they knew too. I don't think there was any reason to believe there was anything miraculous about breaking the sound barrier besides the fact that we hadn't done it, but we clearly saw that physical objects could do it. I'm sure cannonballs were going faster than the speed of sound. Lots of things were going faster than the speed of sound, and they knew the world didn't blow up. Anyway, and we had bullets breaking this, there you go, in terms of their speeds already, of course. So there's that. But it's pretty interesting to consider if the speed of light isn't more of a limit within our understanding of physics. Well, again, it really has to do with your understanding of physics. I'm saying there's absolutely no evidence of any third player. We have all the players moving the speed of light, and then we have matter, which is electrons and protons, and everything else is a composite. So I just go with charges, electrons, protons, and force, bounces off electrons and protons in two different ways. Where's any room for anything going faster than the force? The force is moving the matter. I mean, that's, I shouldn't even really have to argue with people about that one, right? It's just that they have so many wooey things out there that, they've so screwed up everything, they think there's magical ways things move. That matter does actually just magically move. That something doesn't have to tell it to. Okay, and that all the telling to things are all moving the speed of light. We know light is a motivating substance. It has momentum. It imposes momentum. So we know that, and it's never negative momentum. It never makes something move closer to something else. So, I mean, you already have enough evidence that it's kind of telling you that, no, you're always hitting something with pushing energy. And all I can do is create a circumstance where there's more pushing energy in one direction than another. But it's pretty interesting to consider if the speed of light isn't more of a limit within our understanding of physics, and and what we can detect, and less so a pure physical limit. Again, it's not about a limit. It's about where's the source of something else. So again, unless you want to believe in a bunch of these made-up particles and made-up shit, where's the evidence that there's anything in the constituents of the universe that could provide the energy for this extra fast movement? There's no place to get it from. You can't move faster than the stuff pushing you. The pusher moves a certain speed. You can't go faster than the pushing speed. You know, if I go faster than the pusher, I'm not being pushed anymore. I mean, duh. Anyway, I guess we will never know. Well, I think we do already know enough. I mean, how do we detect something that we can't be seen? Well, you detect it based on how fast it gets to you. So again, we're only measuring how long it takes information to get to us. So obviously we could measure it without being capable of going that speed or seeing. I mean, you know, we're just measuring time that it takes to know about something. And that seems always consistent. I think the other issue is an observer standing on Earth, oh, this observer crap, or the ISS or whatever, and detecting speed is also in how an expansion of the universe, assuming what happens follows a traditional understanding of physics. Well, I don't know where you get this idea that there's some traditional understanding. No, I don't even know what do you mean. Relativity, frames, somehow it matters what I think I saw decides what was. You know, what I see decides what was. No, what I see we already know is broken. It's completely dependent on how far away I am from the object when I'm going to see it. So obviously that's, you know, why the hell would I think that has anything to do with the truth? Might result in a different relative speeds versus the absolute speed. You know, again, there's no relativity is just about perception, okay? And so if you understand that perception is horseshit and all we really care about is what actually happened in the universe, there's an absolute time clock everywhere in the universe. The same time is ticking. It's 10 o'clock, right, everywhere. Whatever clock it is where you are right now, it's that o'clock everywhere. All right, and all you could do is if you could go faster than the speed of light, all you can do is get somewhere without it taking you as much time. So instead of you arriving somewhere at 10:05, you can arrive at 10:04 or 10:03 or 10:02 or 10:01 or just almost the tiniest of milliseconds after 10. But you can never go backwards. You can never go anywhere else. All you can go is somewhere else in the future at some distance at some speed. So what? There's nothing else. Oh, it's just terrible. Anyway, in that sense, we can really trust upon what we see anyway. In that sense, can we really trust upon what we see anyway? Well, I think that is already, that anybody could have deduced since Newton almost, right? Because already at Newton's time, they're already pretty sure that this light thing isn't moving instantaneously. So they're already thinking about how the universe has got speed and time built into it. And so it, you know, it should have already occurred to people to say, you know, well, you know, I can look at a star and I can say, oh yeah, that's what the star is and that's what it's doing. But we already know that's not the truth. That's what the star was. That's where it was and what it was. But it has nothing to do with what it is now. Because what it is now is something entirely different. And we know that. We know it could be billions of years off. You're looking at an image and it's billions of years wrong. You know, we know that. We wouldn't have any expectation that we could just, even if we could travel instantaneously and we traveled instantaneously to that star at that location, that star wouldn't exist at that location. It's someplace else completely. It would do us no good to go to that star because that star isn't there. I mean, we know that. They knew that. And so all this wooey conversation about all this crap is just that. It's just, you know, it's not conceding to things we already know are solid. And it's a solid fact that when you're looking at something, you're looking at it as it was, not as it is. Just the truth. And it just depends on how far away you are. It's going to tell you how old your perception is. That's it. The end. Alright, anyway. Well, this all turned into a bunch of crap, so I guess that's probably enough. Yeah. History reset mud flood. I really don't like the term mud flood. I don't know what it's, hashtag mud flood. I don't know what that shit means, but whatever. There's going to be some flooding. Yeah. But it's not going to reset anything. It's going to just move us backward. People are going to become more religious and more this and more that, and they're not going to get more realistic about anything, and blah, 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 blah. I don't think. Just because they're showing that they have no love for the truth. Humans don't like the truth. It's just kind of obvious. Because it doesn't fit into the game they've been taught to play. They're soccer players. Mommy taught them how to play soccer, and so that's what they are, and they don't want to hear about doing anything else with their day. Doing anything constructive. They just want to, I'm really good at kicking balls into pointless nets, so that's what I'm going to do. And that's how they live their lives. Totally invested in a pile of crap. Silly accomplishments, silly ambitions, silly definitions of winning, all that crap. Just crap. Alright, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, just getting so tired of this shit. Anyway, yeah. So there's 2 videos. If somebody wants to do any proving me wrong, 2 videos in this subject videos. Gravity and light. The sensible answer, I think they're called. Yeah. And deconstruct them. Prove that can't be right. Demonstrate how it has some logical flaw in the analysis. And such. So, till the next time. Such. Yeah. It's enough.